Hello, everybody. This is Randy coming from Calvary Baptist Church, and every year our church celebrates Christmas, yes, but we also celebrate Advent. And if this were a normal year, every Sunday I would be calling the kids up to give a children's lesson on Advent. We light the candles according to their weeks. I have a habit of getting the weeks mixed up, and so try to do that as best as I can. But we do that every week, and to try to help us keep our minds focused on the real reason of the season, which is not just Jesus coming to earth as a baby. You know, the gospel doesn't stop there. In fact, it didn't even start there. It started all the way back, as we see in the first reading that we're going to do today. The purpose of this season is to celebrate the incarnation of Jesus Christ, the incarnation of God the Son, and all the implications that are involved with that. And that's why I like to focus in on Advent and why we like to celebrate this, to take a month out of the year, 4 weeks or 5 weeks, depending on the year, to take a month out of the year where we pause and we think about that God became man, the mystery of God becoming man, fully God and fully man. And we celebrate that every year. And so this year, because of COVID, we're not able to do our normal Advent celebrations and stuff. And so what we've done is we've put together a reading schedule for you to do with your family, perhaps between husband and wife, or perhaps just to read on your own, or with your grandkids, whatever situation you find yourself in. And throughout the month, I thought that I would just do some really short videos, no more than 5 or 6 minutes, to just kind of help explain the significance of the readings. I don't know if I'm going to do this with all of them. You know how good intentions tend to go. I get busy, and these videos do take a while to upload and stuff, so I may not be able to do them for everyone, but I do want to do several of them just to kind of help you understand the significance of that day's reading, so on and so forth. So that's what I'm doing here, and I hope that you will enjoy it and that these videos will help you understand and explain the significance of this season, both to your loved ones, your friends, and even perhaps someone you meet along the way. So let's go ahead and get started with December's first reading. Well, one of the things I said in the intro is that the gospel did not begin with the birth of Jesus Christ. The gospel actually goes all the way back to the promises that God gave, beginning with Genesis, beginning at the very beginning. And so our first Advent reading for December 1st, which I know I'm a day late. Today is actually December 2nd, but I did want to go ahead and get this one in. The reading today comes from Genesis chapter 3 and God's response to the curse. And we're going to begin in verse 8, even though verse 15 is really the focal point. But beginning in verse 8, it says, "And they heard the sound of the Lord God," they being Adam and Eve, "walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. And the Lord God called to the man and said to him, 'Where are you?' He said, 'I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself.' And he said, 'Who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat?' And the man said, 'The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me from the tree, and I ate.' And then the Lord God said to the woman, 'Is this what you have done?' And the woman said, 'The serpent deceived me, and I ate.' And the Lord God said to the serpent, 'Because you have done this, cursed are you more than all cattle, and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. And I will put enmity,'" here's the promise, "'between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel.'" So let's talk about what's happening here. Adam and Eve, as you know, have fallen. They have sinned against God, and I'm sure that you know the story. If you don't, you can go back and read Genesis chapter 3. And this is referred to as the fall of man. And in this fall, we see a couple of problems that are made very evident right here in the text in kind of seed form. Number one, we see the beginning of guilt and shame. Guilt and shame. And we see that in Adam and Eve's reaction whenever God comes into the garden. See, before, God had come into the garden every day in the cool of the day, in the mist of the day, and they had walked in the garden with God, and they had enjoyed fellowship. We don't know how long that lasted, but it doesn't seem to have gone on for very long. And so anyway, they had looked forward to this time up until this point. But then after they disobeyed God, after they sinned, now God's presence is a threat to them. And you may recall that, first of all, they were hiding from one another, and then they sewed clothing out of fig leaves in order to cover themselves up. So we see some of that shame just right there. But then as God came into the garden, they recognized that now in my sin, God's presence is a threat, and they had to hide. And so they have guilt and shame all in this. And so God asked them, why did you, where are you? And Adam says in verse 10, I heard the sound of you in the garden and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself. And he says, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? And the man said, verse 12, the woman you gave to be with me, she gave me from the tree and I ate. So we saw guilt and shame, but here now we also see, secondly, self-righteousness. Now we already saw that a little bit in kind of illustration where they took fig leaves and they sewed it to themselves as clothing. So we saw that in kind of an illustration sort of way. But now I want you to notice that when God says, why are you hiding? Did you eat the fruit that I commanded you not to eat? By the way, God knows the answer to that, but he's asking questions to incite conviction in order to get them to understand the seriousness of what's going on. And notice something else, that in the presence of God, that the fig leaves that Adam had sown for himself did not take away the sense of shame and the sense of being naked that he felt. All of his righteous deeds were out the window. And we see that self-righteousness. What we saw in illustration, we now see full form, because here's what he says. He says, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave it to me and I ate. You know, Adam is pleading here, Lord, I am innocent. The problem is with the woman you gave me. So he's blaming Eve, throwing her under the bus. But not only that, if you look at this, look what he's doing. He's actually blaming God. The woman you gave to me. And and every time a circumstance comes in our life that we say, I am innocent in this, something else has caused me to do this. If you really believe in God's sovereignty, if you really believe there are no coincidences, then really, in a sense, you're blaming God for your sin. And that's exactly what Adam does here. Blame everybody else but me. How often have I done that? How often have you done that? And yet look how God responds to the problem of sin, of guilt, of shame, and notice how he responds to their self-righteousness. He gives them this promise in Genesis 3:15. And there's a lot more here that I want to say. Yes, there is the curse. But he says to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. There's a seed form there, excuse the pun, but there's a seed form there of the incarnation. That there is a seed, there is a promised seed coming. There is a promised one who will be born of a woman. And the entire story of the Bible, all the genealogies, all of this stuff is narrowing down who that seed is. The entire Bible is the story of the battle between the seed of the serpent and this promised seed that will come from the woman. And so he tells her that between your seed and her seed, there's going to be a man who will come. And here's what will happen. He shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. This is a very picturesque kind of way of talking about the cross. You say, well, I don't get the picture. Well, here it is. If you're ever, imagine you're running across a garden, you're walking across a garden, and a snake comes at you, and you have no, shovel or anything like that. All you have is your foot. And so you raise your foot and you stomp your foot down on the snake's head in order to kill it. That's the picture here, that the seed of the woman is going to crush your head. But as he's doing so, the serpent's going to jump up, he's going to strike, and he's going to take a bite out of his heel. In other words, when this redemption comes, it's going to come through the wounding of the woman's son. He, of the woman's seed, he will crush the serpent's head, and in the process, he will be wounded. And by his wounds, by his stripes, the effects of the curse will be nullified. And that's the promise of redemption we see here. This is why this verse is called the first euangelion, the proto-euangelion, the first evangelism, the first gospel, because it is clearly picturing that Christ, through his wounds, is going to redeem us from the curse of sin. So I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to other Advent readings with you.